Hello, hello. Welcome to the lives of this American Krishna channel where we go deep into the Bhagavad Gita, the scripture that I quote all the time on this channel, the only scripture on earth that is claimed to have been spoken directly by Krishna or God himself and not through a burning bush or a seer or a prophet. So it's directly the words of God, supposedly. And the text itself claims that when you read the words of the Bhagavad Gita, of this song of God, then you reconnect with God, you become purified. There's all these wonderful benefits. So I benefit from reading the Bhagavad Gita with you, and you benefit from hearing the words of Krishna on this channel. So as you know, I always recommend you guys read the Bhagavad Gita as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, which you can find for free online. You just type Bhagavad Gita as it is. But here we are finishing, we're going through the entire Bhagavad Gita study guide by one of Prabhupada's own disciples. His name is, thank Krishna, he's still alive, His Holiness Hridayananda Das Goswami, or Dr. Resnick, who has a Ph.D. from Harvard University, which he got faster than anyone in the history of the entire University of Harvard University. Prabhupada mentioned to his mother one time, your son has transcendental intelligence. He's a brilliant person, and his Bhagavad Gita study guide really is a wonderful, wonderful text. So we are going to do as we always do, and that is we read his study guide, and wherever there's references to actual verses, as you can see here at 3.9 or 443, we're going to go directly and go to those links so that we can hear directly the words of Krishna. So here we're starting on part 4 called sacrifice or offering. The technical Sanskrit word is yagya or sacrifice. So what does yagya or what does sacrifice mean in the context of the Bhagavad Gita? Let me just adjust my mic here. Okay, so let's read this. The very universe that binds us to karma, because just before, in section 3, it was all about karma, and how karma binds us. So what's the solution to karma? It's sacrifice, right? The very universe that binds us to karma offers us a path to freedom, namely yagya or offering or sacrifice, in other words. Apart from this loophole or escape clause, the whole world is but an endless variety of karma bondage. So at 3.9, and let's go to there, at 3.9, as you can see, Krishna himself speaks of this world, as this very world that we live in, this world that you live in, that I live in. He calls it karma bondage. Karma bondage. It's far out, isn't it? This world is karma bondage, except for karma done for offering. So here Krishna is making it very clear that, hey, unless you act as an offering to God, to me, Krishna is saying, basically, everything you do in this world will bind you to the law of karma. And what happens when you get bound to the law of karma? Rebirth. According to the Bhagavad Gita, you are forced to take birth again in another body, and as they say in French, rebelote, which literally means, here we go again. Here we go again. Here we go again with what? With birth. And not just birth, but old age, which is inevitable unless you die young. Disease, inevitable, again, unless you have a heart attack when you're young. And death, which is certainly inevitable. So here we go again, life after life after life. You don't want to do that. It's not in our interest to do that. So let's go back to the text here. One who makes no offering cannot enjoy this or any other world. So here at 431, and let's go to there, Krishna says that, look, one who does not sacrifice has not this world. How then the next? So here Krishna is establishing this point that, like, even in a sort of a non-religious sense, in this world, if you don't sacrifice something somehow, you can't even be happy in this world. What to speak of the afterlife? Powerful, powerful. So let's go back to what Dr. Resnick says here. Here we go. What then is yagya? or offering? How does it play such an important role in the cosmic function and personal salvation? Krishna teaches that we are created to offer sacrifice, for the Creator builds it into our deep nature as creatures. So Krishna calls us creatures at 3:10. Look, at 3:10, Krishna clearly says, prosper the gods by this, and let the gods prosper you. Prospering one another, you will achieve highest good. Actually, it's before that. If you look at here, you see, he says, of old, the Lord of creatures sent forth creatures with sacrifice and said, by this shall you flourish. Let this yield your chosen desires. Prosper the gods by this, and let the gods prosper you. Prospering one another, you will achieve the highest good. Prospered by sacrifice, the gods will certainly give you desired enjoyments. One who enjoys these gifts without giving back to the givers is merely a thief. And he goes on and on about food specifically. Beings live from food. Food arises from rain. Rain comes from sacrifice. Again, sacrifice arises from duty. So in other words, sacrifice is such an important fundamental component of existence in this material world. And so God, or Krishna, as Dr. Resnick says here, builds into our deep nature as creatures the very notion of sacrifice. We're meant to perform sacrifice. And actually, even atheists perform sacrifice. They perform sacrifice for their nation, for their beloved wife or husband, for, the cause of veganism or whatever it may be. We naturally derive some sort of happiness, or we think we'll derive some sort of happiness by performing in some type of sacrifice. Virtually, let's continue, everyone offers something of symbolic or tangible value to a superior in order to please, placate, oblige, or win favors. And whenever we do, we engage in the most basic sense in yajna, or sacrifice. It is so much part of our nature that even those who dismiss sacred texts, like I was mentioning, like atheists, for example, and shun celestial rites, who don't believe in the gods and the goddesses of the cosmos, perform yajna nonetheless. Thus, people pay taxes and bribes to higher political powers. How many just like JFK Jr. now, made a very important claim that, what's new? That politicians are all controlled by some pharmaceutical company or other, who, a lot of these political campaigns are funded by pharmaceutical companies, by big pharma. So the idea is like, okay, we'll give a donation, we'll perform some sacrifice to get something, to get some sort of government policy, for example, allowing us to inject experimental jabs into people. For example, we ritually honor superiors in the military, at work, in government, on the athletic field, right? Welcome, Hall of Famer, whatever, Kobe Bryant or Shaquille O'Neal, People sacrifice time, energy, money, even their lives for what they see as a higher cause or as a rational way to negotiate and navigate higher power. Thus, yajna, or offering, is a universal impulse, a need, and an inspiration of people everywhere. Okay? Pretty self-explanatory. Not surprisingly, we find that virtually all religions engage the faithful in some sort of offering to divine or higher power, however conceived. True. Typically, one seeks divine favor to secure safety, happiness, prosperity, or enlightenment for oneself and one's dear ones, warding off evil and winning one's wishes. So here's why generally most people who do any type of spiritual or religious activity do them for some sort of personal selfish motivation, either totally selfish or extended selfish. And what I mean by extended selfish, that means, well, it's not really for me. It's for my children. It's for my wife. It's for my community. It's for my nation. But it's just another extension of the body, really. So it's, in that sense, it's selfish. Like, I'll do business with God. Okay. I'll accept that God exists, and I'll perform this ritual or that ritual. I'll give this much in sacrifice, but I want some return on my investment. And the return is, has to be some sort of warding off of evil, or getting money, or getting power, or getting, sense pleasures, and so on. Like asking God or asking divinity for some sort of exchange. So it's like business. It's a business transaction. And here, the author, Dr. Resnick, says something pretty cool here, where I love the following statement here. He says, on rare occasions, which is true, on rare occasions, a devoted spiritualist seeks a divine being's pleasure as an end in itself. This is pure devotion. It's pure devotion. In other words, I just want to please God. That's the only reason I'm approaching God, is to give pleasure to God. That's it. That's all I want, is to have the chance, the honor to be able to serve and love God. And I don't want anything in return. But that's rare. That's rare. As a matter of fact, in the 3rd chapter, I think, or 7th chapter, I think it's 3:7, Krishna says, out of many thousands of men, one may approach me, and out of those who have approached me, hardly one knows me in truth. Let's see if my memory is correct. No, it's not in chapter 3. And then maybe it's 7:3. Let's go to 7:3 real quick. Please don't mind. In 7:3, yes, look, at 7:3, Krishna says, among thousands of persons, one strives for perfection. So what is this perfection? Perfection here, again, is this, understanding God or loving God, or even just being spiritual as a general thing. Not many people do that. Of thousands of persons, one strives for perfection, and of those who strive and succeed, one knows me in truth. In other words, it's really rare to know God in a selfless way. And it's really through that selfless devotion that one can actually understand God. So what's implied in this verse is pure devotion. Again, because in other places in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says one can understand me only through bhakti, or through pure selfless devotion. So obviously, if you know God in truth, you've only been able to know him by him revealing himself through you in reciprocation with your devotion, with your pure devotion. So let's go back to Dr. Resnick's words here. I love this again. Chapter 3. We got to go back to, sorry. Here we are. Sacrifice. And we're at this next page. Here we go. On rare occasions, a devoted spiritualist seeks a divine being's pleasure as an end in itself, but that is not part of the human course. Okay. Bhagavad Gita carefully analyzes the offering act, making a crucial distinction. So this is really important, guys. Actually, we can make a whole YouTube video on it. It's really simple, but at the same time, it's very important. And many of you know this already. The distinction between action, or karma, and action's fruit or reward, called karma phal or karma phala. In Sanskrit, phala or phal in classical Bengali as well means fruit. So in the Vedic literatures, the analogy is given to that of the fruit of a tree, meaning the result of an action. You do something, and the reaction that comes, the result of that action, is the fruit, the phal, the karma phal. Karma means action, and phal means fruit. So the fruit of the karma, the fruit of the action, means the result of your activity. And so there's a difference between these two things. There's karma and the result. There's action and the result that comes from the action. And what's interesting, or what's very important to remember, is that at 247, Krishna very clearly says, look, you have a right to the action itself. You have a right to be attached to that action. As a matter of fact, you cannot be lazy about it. You have to do your best, but the result is not up to you. That's beyond your pay grade. The result is not up to you. But before going to 247 here, let's just go at 3.5. Dr. Resnick, or Hridayananda mentions 3.5. So, what happened? Did something happen here? Oh, someone gave me a thumbs up. Thank you. For those of you who are live here. We're done in about 5 minutes. So at 3:5 here, Hridayananda I mean, I'd just like to say Dr. Resnick because it's just a lot easier to say than Hridayananda Goswami or Hridayananda Maharaj. It's just Dr. Resnick. Driven by our own nature, we must act at every moment, and our acts bear fruit. Wealth, fame, power, knowledge, love, or bodily pleasure, or, the opposite. Now, I like this verse 3:5 because it's a challenge to Zen Buddhism. It's a challenge to Zen Buddhism. Why? Because in Zen Buddhism, correct me if I'm wrong, in Zen Buddhism, the idea is that, okay, let's stop all action precisely because we understand that every action has a reaction and it's all an illusion and, whatever, because, their conception of karma is really whack because there's no soul, what to speak of an individual soul, so who reaps the karma? Go figure. But at least they understand that, look, action only creates trouble in this world and suffering. So we'll just stop all action. And that's why the whole point of Zen meditation is just to be in, we can't even use the word samadhi because samadhi, which is a Sanskrit term, and which which exists way before Buddhism comes on stage, has to do with union with Brahman or with Atma. Now, whether the individual soul is always an individual soul and whether Vishnu or Krishna is the supreme person and we never can be that supreme person, or we are all one and ultimately it's just all one. It's at least the idea is understood that, okay, at least there's some sort of spiritual substance there. There's some sort of eternal Brahman, as it's stated. Whereas the Zen Buddhists at least, deny any type of Atma. And the Dalai Lama says it again and again. We Buddhists, we believe in the doctrine of anatma, no soul. So why do I say this? Because look, at 3:5, Krishna, and ultimately, we accept Krishna as the authority. He's the boss. He himself says in the Gita, I am the boss. I'm God. Everything comes from me. I know everything. I'm the one who gives remembrance and forgetfulness. Not a blade of grass moves without me. So his words are authoritative, at least for those who believe in Krishna. And so at 3:5, Krishna makes a very important epistemological claim, or let's say a claim about ontology. No one ever remains inactive, not even for a moment. Nature's modes force everyone to act. So this idea that, oh, no, we'll just do nothing, we'll stop action, and that's the natural way to meditate and attain so-called enlightenment, nah. Krishna says, look, no one remains inactive. This idea of remaining inactive is an illusion because the three modes of nature, you've heard of these three gunas. If you haven't heard of the three gunas, look it up. Go on Google, type three gunas or three modes of nature, Bhagavad Gita, type as it is, so you'll get a proper Vaishnava interpretation or explanation of Krishna's words. We are forced to act. Every soul can never remain inactive, not even for a moment. So that's an important point. So let's continue. Let's go back to Dr. Resnick's words here. And therefore, driven by our nature, we must act at every moment. We just saw it. And our acts bear fruits, okay, the reaction, the result. Remarkably, and here we go back to this point that I was making. Remarkably, Krishna tells us that we have a right only to our duty, but never to its fruits. We must offer the fruits to those higher powers that bestowed them, and ultimately to God, obviously. We have to offer the fruits of our work to Krishna. That's what he's ultimately saying here. But let's look at this verse, because 247 is super important. At 247, Krishna says, Karma niyavadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhur marte sangastva karmani. In my 20s, I was able to memorize a good chunk of important verses, even though I never managed to really learn Sanskrit. Unfortunately, I tried a few times, but it was too late. It's hard. I always had trouble with grammar and stuff. The languages I know, French, English, and Spanish, I just know them because thanks to my parents, I learned them really young as a kid when your brain is just, really flexible and everything. So at 247, here's this super, super important verse. Firm in yoga. Here we go. You have a right to action alone, never to its fruits. And then he adds something interesting, Krishna, him, remember. He says, neither be motivated by action's fruits, nor cling to inaction. So clinging to inaction means, in other words, being lazy. You cannot cling to inaction. And I speak that, I speak to myself because a lot of time I tend to be lazy and, I waste time, sitting on the sofa and scrolling through Facebook or YouTube and, and I know I have responsibilities to do. For example, I have to make some payments on a credit card, or I have to contact some people for the, the little business I'm trying to run or whatever. And I postpone those things. Or even in terms of spiritual practice, I know I should wake up early in the morning, but, I'll press that snooze button. I know I should take a shower right away as soon as I wake up, but I'll just kind of, drink some water and hang out, maybe look at my messages and stuff. So that's clinging to inaction. And Krishna says, don't cling to inaction. Krishna says, don't cling to inaction. Right? You have a right to action alone, never to its fruits. So do your best so you don't feel guilty. I could have done better. Do your best in all spheres of life, but the result of your actions, that's up to Krishna. That's up to God. He'll give you the result, whether he wants or whether you deserve it or a combination of both, but that shouldn't be your motivating factor. Really, really important. So let's go back and conclude here with the little paragraph, and then we'll finish for today. We must offer the fruits of those we must offer the fruits to those higher powers that bestow them. So those fruits such as, wealth or fame or success or a house or a car or whatever, or a nice wife or a nice husband or nice children, these gifts or these results, or, you don't want to offer the bad things to Krishna or to God. Like if you, I don't know, something horrible happens in your life, you're not like, okay, I'll offer this disaster to you, my Lord. It's better that we offer like good things that come to us to God. The point being that these fruits that come to us, they come to us ultimately from God, who's the supreme controller, but they come through the via media or via medium of gods and goddesses with a not a capital, but with a normal G, the equivalent of Christian maybe angels or whatever. Gods and goddesses, but not God with a capital G, like the supreme honcho, the supreme God, the supreme Lord, who in this case is Krishna or Vishnu. But people like Indra or Ganesh or this or that, who are like, ministers in the court of the emperor, so to speak. And it's through them, according to the Gita, according to this worldview, that, karmic fruits are bestowed upon us. So we're supposed to offer them back at least to these gods and goddesses. And that's why we saw in chapter 3, Krishna explains how there's this cycle that's been made to turn where the gods and goddesses bestow, blessings, material blessings upon humans. And then in turn, humans use what they need, but then they make offerings they sacrifice back up to the gods. And then the gods are satisfied and they offer, again, blessings to earth. And this way there's this cycle. But a lot of people tend to forget that behind this whole cycle, there's a Supreme Lord, Krishna, who made this whole cycle happen. And so when you know this, you don't necessarily have to offer X or Y offering to this or this god or goddess, because you go directly to the emperor. The idea is if you're good with the king, then you don't need to placate or to satisfy the ministers, because the king's satisfied. And therefore, in Krishna consciousness, we claim that there's no need to offer, like, you say this to people especially from a Hindu background, who are used to worshiping many deities on a sort of an equal footing. And some of them like, well, should I stop worshiping Ganesh? Should I stop worshiping Shiva? And what about Sarasvati? And what about, Kartikeya? And there's 33 million gods and goddesses. Well, the idea is that if you worship the Supreme Lord, you don't owe anything to anybody anymore. Therefore, just focus on Krishna. And then that's why at the end of the Gita, that's like one of the concluding instructions of Krishna himself. At 1866, Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarvapebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religions or dharmas, including, a rite or a cult to this deity or that deity or that deity or this god or that goddess, and just take shelter of me alone. So the Bhagavad Gita is very much monotheistic and personalist, in the sense that we're talking about a supreme person and not just some white light. So let's continue, or let's finish up again. Indeed, karma binds us precisely when we grasp the fruits of work. Krishna defines a selfish binding act as one in which we cling to the fruits. Okay, we don't need to go to 5.12, but let's just go real quick. At 5.12, Krishna says, giving up action's fruit, you achieve enduring peace. So you got to give up action's fruit and offer that fruit, as Krishna says, to him. If we reverse this motion and first offer the fruit to its source before enjoying it, we perform yajna and free ourselves from karma. And here's the whole idea of prasadam, for example, or mercy, where you offer just the bare, like literally a fruit that you bought with some money, a fruit, you offer it to Krishna before you eat it. And then that offering, we believe, there's a transubstantiation that happens as with the body of Christ, with the Catholics, supposedly, although it's vegetarian, it's not some flesh, there's no blood here. And then God, blesses that food and you eat that karma-free food. So we'll continue with this question next time. One may well ask, why can't we enjoy the fruit of our own labor? Well, we'll answer that question next. So thanks for watching. For those of you who are live, 5 of you, thank you so much for allowing me to be a little mouthpiece for Krishna. It's a great honor, and I hope you enjoyed Krishna's words also. And, Dr. Resnick's nice explanations. And I'll see you next time. All glories to Prabhupada and to Krishna.